So I want you to imagine something for me. I want you to imagine about this tall, what's that, couple of feet, about this tall, maybe a couple of feet around, a stunning Buddha statue with the hand out and the mudra of one hand up, one hand out, love and limits, right, Joe? So imagine this beautiful Buddha statue with the mala beads around his neck. Goodness, sorry. And he's nestled in some blooming blue, purple-hued hydrangeas. Can you see it? Imaginations are powerful. Do you see my Buddha? And he's nestled in the hydrangeas, and they're blooming all around him. He's majestic. Hold that. So last week, I'm walking through the neighborhood with my nephews. They were here from Georgia for a week, as you know, visiting. I had a great time. We took a right out of the driveway, walked down to the end of the road, and took a right, and then took a left, and we're in the park, right? That's one of their favorite things to do. So walking along, do-do-do. Oh, but wait, I should tell you something before I get to that part. So let's go back before we go. Let's go back further. Let's go back a couple of years. So this Buddha that I just described was nestled in our hydrangea. And then one day, we travel a lot, we do lots of things, and one day I asked my wife, I'm like, did you move the Buddha? And she's like, no, I thought you moved the Buddha. I'm like, I thought you moved the Buddha. Oh, Stephen probably moved the Buddha. Stephen is our friend who house sits for us, and he redecorates too. And Buddha had one little broken finger, and I said, you know what? Knowing him, he probably took Buddha to get him fixed and fix his finger. I need to ask Stephen. Well, I forgot, and I never did. Life goes on. Occasionally, we'd say, what happened to the Buddha? Anyway, fast forward. Now, I'm walking down the street with my nephews last week. I take the right out of the driveway. I get to the end of the road. I take the right. I look to the left, and there's this house that's always decorated for Halloween, which I appreciate. I love Halloween. It's really got this goth look going on, there's spider webs and skeletons and stuff. And I'm like, la, la, la. Buddha, is that you? Skeleton head, crown of thorns, broken all the fingers, just really, really, really trying to be as bad as Buddha self, right? And I'm like, they stole my Buddha. And I'm like, I got these adorable little 4-year-old, 6-year-old nephews right here, and I'm trying not to say the things that are coming to my mind out loud. And but I'm not happy. It's my Buddha. And all of a sudden he's looking less than, well, anyway. So I'm not happy because clearly somebody has come into my yard, stole our Buddha, taken it down to the end of the street and made it their own and turned him into, heavy metal Buddha, whatever. But here he is, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to knock on the door. I'm going to say, who do you think you are stealing my Buddha? No, I say, I'm going to call the police. They stole my Buddha. I say, I'm going to text my wife. I know where the Buddha is. You're not going to believe it. I send her a picture. And I'm like, I'm really mad. She goes, babe, it's okay. Let it go. This is all through text, right? Well, I'm trying to maintain my Aunt Christy's in a happy mood face. And I wasn't. And she's like, babe, let it go. And I'm texting back pictures. But look at Buddha. They broke his fingers. Babe, let it go. And I'm texting back, but look, like you can't even see his face. Like he's under there. That's our Buddha. I can't just let it go. And then I'm texting all these gifs of like the army crawling thing. And it says Operation Buddha Reconnaissance, Reclaiming Buddha 2400. Who's with me, And I'm like so obsessed about this Buddha. Well, then she sends this text. Babe, Buddha's gone metal. Let him have his experience. There was my pause. Right? Sometimes we need a pause, and we can't find it. But that's why we come in community. That's why we choose our relationships and our friendships carefully. We want the people that can pause our discontent, not pause our joy. Right? So she gave me the pause I needed to redirect, because immediately, as soon as I hit pause, with her help, with laughter, Buddha's gone metal, let him have his experience. I'm like, only you. And then she starts sending me gifts of like heavy metal rockers and stuff. I'm like, Kim's going to really appreciate this. But the minute I had that pause, then the training kicked in. Then the teaching that I try to live by every day was right there to hold me. Right there was Byron Katie's teaching that I love so much, that asked the 4 questions, right? The first one, is it true? Yes, it's true. I can tell that's my Buddha under that skeleton. I think it's my Buddha. I'm pretty sure. Second question, are you absolutely sure that it's true? No, but it's probably my Buddha. I really think it's my Buddha. Are you absolutely sure that it's true? No, fine. This is all going on in my heads, right? In my one head. And I'm like, okay, fine. Third question, where would you be without the thought that someone came into your yard and took something that was yours, that someone came into your yard and violated your safety, right? That's how it felt. It felt yucky. Where would I be without that thought? This is Byron Katie. If you're unfamiliar, I encourage you to look it up. The book called Loving What Is. First, is it true? Second, are you absolutely positive that what you're thinking is true? And three, where would you be without that thought? Well, I'd be right back with this 4-year-old and this 6-year-old that are precious, that have my heart, and that want to have my attention, but I'm too obsessed about Buddha, metal Buddha. And so, where would I be without that thought? I'd be at peace. I'd be letting Buddha have his experience. I would be going to the park with my nephews. So the pause and the redirect back into the center of my being was what happened for me. And then it occurred to me, the Buddha was taken, right? Redirect from what you feel like is absent to what is actually there, no matter how small. So the Buddha statue is gone. That feeling of it being absent is, it's gone. The Buddha teaching, the teachings that I've done my best to live by, that the Buddha taught of wisdom and discernment and compassion and love and harmony and peace and joy and non-attachment, was still there. All I needed was the pause and the willingness to redirect in a different direction. Attachment is suffering. Pause, redirect. Pause, redirect. My dad was a farmer. Happy Father's Day again. I was thinking about Father's Day today and this talk, and I was like, I need to share one about my dad, because he was so good at living a life of non-attachment. He lived in surrender and completely trusting that life was showing up for him. I don't know how it worked in his brain. He never really said, I just believe life is for me or God is for me. Or he never said things like that. He just lived it. So I got to experience that. I know not everyone had that experience, but I'm very fortunate that John Walton meets Andy Griffith was my dad. So anyway, he was a farmer most of his life, or all of his life, really. He did some other things too, but farming was the main thing. And chicken farming was I'm vegan. Did I mention that? But anyway, love you, Daddy. So he had this chicken farm for a long, long time, and for over 40 years. And one day, they cut him off and said, we won't be bringing you any more chickens. That's how he paid the bills. At that point, he had let go of everything else. He was just doing the chicken farming and maybe a couple odds and ends. And we were livid. I was like, just like me seeing the metal Buddha, right? I was like, somebody, this is not right. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to fix this, and we're going to sue. And he's like, no, we're not. But you should. But I'm like, well, how can they just do this? And he said, well, honey, I've been on a contract for over 40 years, 8 weeks at a time. Chicken farmers are on 8-week contracts. I didn't know that until then. So they never knew from one batch of chickens to the next if they would. That's the way they used to do it anyway. If they were going to get any more, and that's the way he lived his life, with such surrender. And so here it's now taken away from him. He's 70 years old, 71 years old, still has bills and still has the desire and the willingness and the ability to work. So he paused, and we're all like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And he would just go, thinking about it, not sure. But knowing him, he was also praying about it. But he would just say, thinking about it, I'm not sure. Didn't take long before he said, well, I like to drive around. I like to look at the countryside. I like to talk to people. I like to help people. I'm going to go become a realtor. Went to school at 72 and became a real estate agent and was one of the best-selling agents in the area. Because, who's not going to buy from John Walton and Andy Griffith? But anyway, but he lived that pause, surrender, turn to what I do have. What I do have is a personality that loves to talk to people and a desire to drive around and look at land and a desire to help people. And I'm going to go with that. Trusting that life is for you, finding ways to hold it all in love. And like I talked about last week, not taking it personal. And also this week, not being attached. These things help us move beyond the mistakes of our past, beyond the shortcomings of our past, beyond the places where we just didn't quite bust through that ceiling of whatever it is. More love, more joy, more health, more peace. Learning to do these things, but it takes that practice of that pause and that redirection. Because we are made up of our predominant thinking and feeling state. It attracts our experiences to us, helps us co-create our individual experience and our collective experience based on what we're cultivating inside. So the more that we surrender and the less we fight against, the more that we go with the flow, and the less we fight against, the more we are in harmony with the universe. The more that we are able to just flow freely and not fight against. Now, this stuff we talk about every Sunday. It's great. But it's not just for when things are going great. It's for when someone steals something from you, when someone hurts your heart, when someone embarrasses you or thinks less of you, or when you get fired, or you're depressed, or you're sad, or you're grieving. That's when we come back to practice that pause. Every single time, as many times as it takes throughout the day, until it becomes less and less needed to course correct and to come back. It has to be practiced in order to work. We have to use it, right? We have to use it. So there's another reading from an earlier day in the Science of Mind magazine. And I just want to share this one paragraph. It's from the one that talked about be your own map maker. And it says, no one else can be the map maker of my personal creative process. Make our own map of inspired action. Our essential nature can never fully breathe by living a path of imitation. We learn to trust ourselves through trusting our instincts, passions, and our unique inner callings. So that living a life of imitation is what we want to avoid. We want to leave that alone, that imitation. Make our own map, chart our own course. And sometimes it's not just imitating other people and sizing ourselves up and coming up short, right? Like, well, I'm not as good as that person. Well, I can't do that as good as they can. And I'm not as smart as them. I don't make as much money as them. I'm not as old as them or as young as them, as thin as them or as big as them, whatever. It's not just about the imitating someone else because you don't think you're good enough. What I really also want to drive home is the tendency we have to imitate our old self. Imitating our old self. I tell people, I love that quote that says, if you haven't seen me in a few years, introduce yourself because I'm not who I was, right? We change so much. Especially when you're in a community like this where you're constantly trying to do your part to cleanse the lens of your own perception, to recognize the unity of all life, to recognize the oneness of all life, and to see God in all things. Man, we're changing. We're evolving. Somebody the other day said, I ran into a friend of yours, and she said, oh, Christy Snow. I used to go to shows with her. Man, she was always late. I'm sure you know all about that. And the two friends said, no, actually, she's never late. She's always on time. This morning, I thought I was going to be late. I showed up exactly 1 minute early. But I used to be chronically late. That's just one little simple example of things that I decided I don't like the way that feels. I don't like to rush. I like to get places early or at least on time to the best of my ability, and I changed that. But we're all changing, and when we're aware, when we're living in a space of awareness, we have the ability to go through life and not revert back to old patterns. But man, it's sometimes a challenge. Like COVID came along, and I don't know about you, but I was like, okay, there's some blessings in here. I'm going to find them. I'm going to dig through here and find some blessings. One was I was a little too on the go before COVID, and I liked the new pace of peace. And I was like, after COVID's over, when we get back to normal, who knows what that's ever going to be, forward. Normal's different. But when things get back to normal, I'm not going to be so busy. How many people have said that, thought that, and then found themselves going, I'm back, right? We have to be mindful. I just caught myself doing it again the other day. I won't say who they are because I didn't ask permission, but I was going to meet with someone in this room, and I said, how about Thursday? And she was like, no, I already have an appointment on Thursday. And I'm like, well, can I make it like a few hours later? She's like, no, I'd rather just focus on that appointment that day. And I was like, I said I was going to do that. I said I was going to be a little more about less scurry, less worry, more present moment, peace in the moment, right? We can still do it. It's about bringing ourselves back to the current and deciding, making a decision every single moment. Which way do we want to go now that we've made the pause and we're redirecting to what we have and loving it into expansion, loving what we have into more time, money, health, relationships, harmony. You take what you have and you give gratitude for it and it grows, I promise you. So not falling into those old patterns. And silence is such a beautiful tool to help us with that. Most people, when I do a silent retreat, I can't tell you how many people, most people, will say, I really want to do that and it scares me. I really want to do that, I'm terrified. I'm like, what do you think I'm going to do? Like cut your tongue out and make sure you can't talk? No, it's not that harsh. I promise. It's going to be okay. But we have this desire for stillness and this resistance to it at the same time. We all do. We all do. I can't tell you how many ministers that I will, I've had prayer partners over the years, many, many prayer partners, and both people at different times, me and the other people, have expressed like, I can't meet with you today. And it's usually when we most need to pray. When we most need to meditate, we find all the reasons not to. When we most need to pause and go in the direction of amplifying what we do have that's working, we have a tendency to go the other direction and focus on what's missing. But we are at choice. And that silence, that taking that moment to just be still, it recenters us. Taking our hand to our heart takes our attention there. Slowing our breath consciously allows us to drop out of fight or flight. We're going to be having some opportunities to process grief and healing within the next couple of months because we've all experienced a lot of trauma, as I talked about last week, over the last 2.5 years. And a lot of times we are afraid to go into that stillness because we're afraid it might just swallow us whole. But I promise you, it's safe to do so. And it's what brings you back to center. It's what turns you in the direction of love. It makes it possible to turn into the direction of love when you stop and become still. So right after I proposed to my wife, we went on a trip. We were at the beach. It was a beautiful condo on the beach, oceanfront. It was awesome. And then we got in a big fight. You ever had one of those? You're on a great trip. You're on this great trip. Everything's perfect. And you're like, just nasty britches all the way around. So we got in this huge fight right before bed. And we've made it a commitment early on that we'll never go to bed angry, ever. We made that commitment. Done. Well, here we are. I'm gonna be vulnerable right now and share my less skilled self moment. So here we are. We're having this big fight. And I go into the imitation of the old me. So good. I did such a good imitation of the old me. It went like this. Grab my corner of the covers. With a good just in case she missed the cover part. Back to her. Click off the light. One more. Just in case my point had not been made. At which point she turns over and she says, Christine Snow. We don't turn away in this family. We turn in. I started sobbing because I had wanted my whole life to be in a healthy relationship where I could recognize when I was not being my best skilled self and when my person could recognize, hey, we need a pause right here. Let's go back to the basics of what we agreed on. Let's turn into love. I had wanted my whole life to have this kind of healthy, grounded love. So I started sobbing and I turned in. Turning in to love is not always easy because he stole my Buddha. It's not right. I am right. I'm right. I can get everybody in here to agree with me that we're going to have Operation Reclaim Buddha at 2400 and we're all going to have a little black stuff on our faces and we're going to go do army crawl. I bet you I could have all y'all on board with it, even if you were on the sidelines going, go, woo, you got this. I'm right. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be happy? I choose happy every time. I choose happy every time. The other one is so subjective anyway, right? And then half the time you fight about something and you can't even remember what you were fighting about. And you're like, you're mad though, and you were right. Want to be happy or do you want to be right? I just want to be happy. I want to live from that place of joy. You see, there's a self-governing, self-balancing, self-correcting mechanism in the universe, but you're not it. I'm not it. We're not the totality of the infinite. We are made in the image and likeness of it, but there's all so much more that we don't even know that goes on behind the scenes. Let karma do it. Let karma handle it. Dude stole the Buddha. Okay, I feel for you. I do. I feel for you. So let people work their own stuff out. It's not my place. I just want to be free. I just want to be free. I want to let my side of the street stay clean and leave the cleaning of somebody else's side up to them. Or as Byron Katie says, my business, your business, God's business. I just want to focus on mine and leave God's business to God and your business to you and do the best that I can by pausing and redirecting and turning in to love. Because how people treat you, as Wayne Dyer says, how people treat you is their karma. How you react to it is yours. So let's take care of our side of the street. Let's turn in to love. So it is.